Hello, everyone, and welcome to my office hours. Today we're going to talk about vegetable gardening and how to create that in your early child care program. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, so our agenda for today is for me to explain the importance of gardening, some of the challenges of gardening and their possible solutions. Also, how to get started in making a square-foot garden bed, and I'll have a video to show you how to do that. Also, some best plants for your children's garden, and also how to make gardening safe. Of course, we want to make sure we're doing that in our early child care program. We'll also have cooking skills for different age groups, and tips on how to engage kids in cooking and gardening, and also we'll have some success stories from our past programs. Let's go ahead and get started. All right, so gardening is important for many reasons, of course. So it encourages kids on how to eat healthy. It provides a way of exercise for the kids. It also helps them build confidence because once kids are able to complete their tasks, it gives them a sense of self and a sense of how to be sufficient and confident. Gardening also helps with the analytical abilities, again, with the measuring, with the digging, all that stuff. It's helping the kids grow some sort of social, emotional, and analytical abilities. Gardening, of course, helps relieve stress. And, of course, it encourages a positive and social interpersonal skills. When kids are gardening with each other, they, talk amongst each other. They talk about the type of colors and things like that. So gardening is basically all-inclusive skill in doing great things for kids. All right, so now we're just digging a little bit deeper, as I mentioned before. So gardening helps with developmental skills. It helps with science. This involves classification, weather, different types of insects, type of soils. You can also talk about the plant life, so from germination through the harvesting. You can talk about that with the kids. Gardening helps with math skills. Again, kids are counting the seeds. They're counting the number of plants. They're measuring. They're weighing. Gardening also helps with languages. Kids are using words to describe colors, taste, textures, things like that. Gardening helps with the fine motor skills, and these are the skills that, how do I explain this? These are the skills that, I guess, like kind of pinching or grabbing, pushing, scrubbing. Those are like the little skills that you use to garden, whereas growth are more like wider ranges of movement. Cognitive skills, again, it helps with curiosity when you're looking to see how long the plant's going to take to grow or the process of the plant growing, sort of cause and effect, what happens when I water the plant, what happens when I don't, problem solving, things like that. So I just want to ask you all, what are some of the challenges with gardening in your program? I see one person mentioned space. Others mentioned money, of course. Someone mentioned sustainability. These are all great answers, and hopefully I'll be able to address them all. So one challenge here, as someone mentioned, money. So lack of resources such as space, the curriculum, knowledge, financial support, volunteer support, lack of staff to support or participate, lack of time for gardening. And there are solutions for this. So there are grants available for programs specifically for gardening purposes. And I do have a list of those grants later. I'll share that with you all. And you also want to check in with your state's farm to preschool resources for technical support and materials. If you need help, especially in terms of curriculums and things like that, they are a great source. And also the use of master gardeners or gardening clubs. They are always looking for ways to volunteer their time to garden with early child care programs. So they are a great source if you're looking for more bodies to help you with the gardening process. As far as lack of space, there are different types of gardening you can use. Perhaps you can try doing, instead of a garden bed, you can have a greenhouse or other methods that help with the lack of space in your program. And I'll talk about that as well as we get further. Another difficult thing was preparing the soil. Again, if you use the master gardeners and technical support from the state or gardening clubs, they will help you get started with this process. Programs can also choose to use community gardens. That way you can avoid this challenge as well, because they already prep everything and you just have to kind of plant. So they are a great way to overcome this challenge. All right, another challenge here is natural challenges such as weather, pest issues, low garden yield. And again, there are alternatives to garden beds, such as container gardens or greenhouses, and these also address the lack of space in your program. They're also, the garden houses and the greenhouses are also a good way to avoid pest issues as well, and I'll talk about that when we get there. All right, so all right, so to get started with your garden bed, you definitely want to make sure you choose a sunny location. That's the most important part of building a square foot garden. You also want to assemble your square foot garden and make sure that the older kids are helping with this. This is a task for older kids, and you don't want to have the younger kids, of course, with the hefty tools and things like that. You want to also make sure you have the kids help decide which plants you want to plant, where, things like that. And you also want to make sure each age group has like their own garden. I remember one of our programs had mentioned they had a program specific, a garden specifically for the 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, and 5-year-olds. You also want to discuss what the process of gardening, like by showing pictures and reading books to the kids and helping them understand how the garden looks when it's full bloom. And you also want to do things like, you know, sing songs, things like that, just to get the kids really excited about gardening. So I'm going to show a video about how to build a vegetable garden. So hold on tight.
Two things we need for a vegetable garden are sun and good drainage. Now, in this part of the garden, we get sun all day long. All right, guys, you can put that down right there. What we're going to build our raised garden out of is cedar. Now, this is rot resistant, so it'll last a long time. It's 2 inches thick. On the end, we have 2 4-foot pieces. On the sides, we have 10-foot pieces. When we put it together, we're going to have a 4 by 10 box, and that's what we have to do now, just screw all the pieces together. All right? We're going to hold this cedar together using these 3-inch coated screws. We're going to line the corner up. Okay, you got your screw gun? Take it on there nice and straight. Lift up on it a little bit. Go ahead. All the way in. Okay, now let's do the bottom one. All right, now what we have to do is square up all 4 corners. We're going to do that using our framing square. If I hold it in here, you can see that it's out of square. See that space? I'm going to take and slide the corner down. Now it fits good and tight. Now to hold it there, I'm going to use this piece of wood. Thank you, Bella. I'm going to take this piece of decking, just screw it down in place. Here's your screw. Make sure the gun's nice and straight. There you go. All right, guys, that looks good. It's lined up perfectly with the edge of the house. Now, what I want you to do is take your edger and mark out the edge of the blocks. What we're going to do is, once we get it all marked out, we're going to move it and take out all the grass. Slide the box down. Now, I'm going to take my grubbing tool, and I'm going to start ripping up the grass, all right? You can give me a hand in just a minute. We still have to really loosen up the soil.
And that'll give us even better drainage.
Exactly. Set it down in. Okay, just check it for level. Not so good, Ricky. That right-hand edge is going to go down about 1 inch. I'm going to lift it up, take the shovel, and Try to scrape just an inch out from underneath it, all right? Okay. Now we're going to put stakes in every 2.5 feet to support the cedar so it won't bow out. This is just a piece of 2x4 cedar that I put a point on. I'm going to drive it down as far as I can, and then we'll screw it right into the side. Now, with the corner piece removed, we're going to take our stake and put it on the inside. This is going to be a great place for us to screw in the corner so that it won't separate. I'll just drive it in, and then you're going to screw it in from both sides. All right, Vicki, I'm going to wheel these in and dump them. I want you to keep spreading them until the bed's filled evenly, about 2 or 3 inches from the top. All right, you ready? Look at that beautiful soil, huh? Now, with the whole bed filled, we're ready to put in our end piece. Okay, I'm going to line it up for you. Go ahead and screw it right in. While you screw off the corner, I'll cut off the stakes. I brought you some great plants for your garden today. This is a tomato called Super Marzano. It's great for sauce. Your mother's going to love it. Over here, we have a zucchini. We have a couple of corn that we're going to put in. I'm going to take a little bit of scatter fertilizer. I'm going to mix it in the bottom of the hole. And then I'm going to take this tomato and I'm going to plant it, but I'm going to plant it a little bit other plants. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pinch off these leaves. And I'm going to bury it down really deep in the soil. A tomato is the only plant that when you plant it deep, it'll develop roots along the stem and it makes it much sturdier. So now I'm just going to take them back, fill it in. Tap once. All set. Tag it for me. Good job. I want you to go in, give each one of them a good drink. Okay, no. Long soak. That's better. All right, what we have to do now is we have to mulch the plants. We're going to use some of the grass clippings your father had out back, okay? Just going to take them and spread them around the plant. Not too heavy, just about an inch. It's going to hold the moisture in the soil, and it'll also stop the weeds from coming in.
So can anyone tell me what are the things that they saw the guy doing with the kids? Like, okay, I see someone mentioning that he was engaging the kids. Very good. He also picked a very sunny location for the bed. Let's keep that in mind as well. Yeah, again, we see him interacting with different age groups. Yeah, very good. So he had the older kid doing sort of the handy stuff and having the little kids, like, watering the plants and, you know, putting the plants into the bed, things like that. Very good. So hopefully this motivates you and helps you understand what it entails, like building a whole vegetable garden. It's not too much work, but it can get a little tedious. But all right, so again, we do have alternatives to raised beds. We have mini greenhouses, which are great for cropping at any time of the year. And especially when you don't want to grow any vegetables or flowers outdoors when it's snowing, when it's cold, things like that. It also helps protect your crops from many diseases, particularly those that are soil-borne or common field pests. All right, and the next one we have is our container beds. Container beds are easily portable. Of course, they're a great alternative for programs that have limited space. Just like the greenhouses, they help protect your crops from many diseases. And of course, always keep in mind that there are suggested container size for every plant. Almost any vegetable that grows in a typical garden can also grow in a container garden as well, container-grown plant. And vegetables that are suited for growing in containers are tomatoes, peppers, eggplants, green onions, beans, lettuce, squash, radishes, and parsley. So definitely make sure you keep that in mind. All right, so the best plants for children to grow, again, first-time gardeners, young or old, you want to make sure you grow easy-to-grow fruits and vegetables such as radishes, carrots, and lettuce. And then you can also grow as-is fruits. As-is fruits are fruits that are ready to go once they're full bloom. You can wash it real good, and then they're ready to use. These type of fruits and vegetables include peas, beans, tomatoes, strawberries, zucchini, and cucumbers. All right, so I have a question for you all. Can garden produce be used to meet the CACFP meal and snack requirements? Let me give you all some time to, okay, so I see many of you all saying yes. Yep, and you're absolutely correct. So CACF funds can be used to purchase items for gardens such as seeds, fertilizer, watering cans, rakes, and more, as long as the produce grown in the garden will be used as part of the reimbursable meal and for nutrition education activities. Centers using garden produce and CACFP reimbursable meals should document the weight and the volume of the produce. Okay? All right, so moving along, we want to make sure you all understand that when you're gardening, you have to make sure you keep your garden safe. So beyond making sure that different age groups are doing different things, you also want to make sure you're keeping your garden chemical-free. You want to use plant-based organic matter for compost, peat moss, and also insecticides. You also want to make sure you use naturally rot-resistant and long-lasting woods for raised beds, such as cedar wood, redwood, pine wood. And you also want to make sure you use fresh produce. And you also want to make sure the fresh produce, once it's in full bloom, it is washed thoroughly before it's eaten. And also, the most important, you want to make sure kids are using proper hand washing skills before they eat. All right, so we do have gardening and cooking tips for different age groups. And again, we have the appropriate activities for 2-year-olds. In terms of gardening, you want to make sure that, again, they're using their fine motor skills. So they're pushing child-sized wheelbarrows, they're watering plants, they're planting large seeds, such as beans and things like that. You want to make sure they're also observing, they're using those analytical skills, and they're observing the insects and ripening produce and things like that. For cooking, you want to make sure they're scrubbing the vegetables and fruits, they're carrying items to the table, they're washing, they're turning lettuce, and they're breaking bread into pieces. For 3-year-olds, again, gardening, they're doing a little bit more advanced. So at this point, they're mixing the soil, they're planting seeds, they're filling the water cans, they're watering the plants, they're observing, just like the 2-year-olds, but they're observing the plant growth. They're comparing, at this point, comparing leaf shapes, the colors, describing the appearance of the fruits and vegetables. And as far as cooking, you want to make sure they're like shaking the drink, making sure the containers are closed, they're pouring the liquids, they're spreading butter, they're kneading dough, they're serving food. So they have a higher responsibility task than the 2-year-olds. As they get older, so 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds, at this point they're using more of their gross motor skills. So they're raking the soil, they're shoveling compost, they're harvesting, they're filling up the water cans, they're watering plants just like the 3-year-olds, they're pulling weeds, and they're identifying, at this point they're identifying the garden insects and the fruits and the vegetables and things like that. For cooking, again, they're juicing, they're peeling, they're mashing, they're pressing, they're measuring the dry ingredients, and then they're cracking and breaking the eggs and things like that. All right, so again, tips for engaging kids in cooking and gardening. You want to make sure you're making this a fun opportunity for the kids, for them to use their senses, their touch, their smells, their taste, describing what they see at in the garden. You want to make sure you're focusing on seasonal fruits and vegetables that are harvested in the garden. So you want to talk about, okay, so mangoes or things like that. This is only grown maybe once every 3 months. I'm making this up. But like, you want to make sure you talk to kids about that so they understand the process. You also want to make sure you're model tasting the new foods as well. Kids always look at adults and always follow what they see. So make sure as you're doing the gardening and talking about the process, you're also trying the new foods as well with the kids. You also want to make sure you have the kids try the raw product first and compare it with the cooked product. So just comparing those tastes, walking them through, like, how does it taste? How does the cabbage taste when it's uncooked? How does it taste when it's cooked? Things like that. To help kids understand texture and flavor, things like that. You also want to encourage kids to say no thank you when they do not like a food product. You also want to make sure you're reading the children's book that includes cooking and gardening so that kids can understand and really be engaged in this process. So family involvement, of course, everyone's looking for a way to involve families in this process. So again, you want to make sure you organize a parent group, much like a parent-teacher association, to lead the project. Families are also a great way to have volunteers for the gardening activities. As far as like picking a location for the gardening, make sure you have families involved in every single process. You also want to make sure you host a harvest event. I've had many programs do this. Once the plants are in full bloom, you want to make sure you invite the families to come celebrate and taste the foods with their kids. You also want to make sure you encourage families to grow a garden at home. If you shouldn't stop at the program, make sure they try and follow this up at home, get the kids excited throughout. You also want to make sure you encourage families to cook with their kids as well. And you can also provide them with resources for different age groups in terms of cooking. That way kids, parents understand what their kids are able to do based on their age. All right, so I do have a success story here about one of our programs. So this success story is from the Learning Tree in Florida. So they created a garden bed, as you can see in the picture, and they said that of course, it was a process to get the bed going and finding a location. But as you can see, the kids love the garden bed. They picked out the fruits and the vegetables, and they were able to create meals with it. They invited families to come and celebrate. As you can see, families are here celebrating, helping with plucking out the vegetables and things like that. So they said this really helped with family engagement. And of course, they're going to continue to do this throughout the school year. They also raised funds to build this garden bed. So this is a very great experience for programs, I believe, and a true success story in its own. This one is Panamona Early Head Start. Now they, unlike the previous program, the previous program was actually a family child care, so they were able to find space and there was more autonomy when it came to raising the bed. But this particular one is a Head Start program. Not only did they not have the space, but they did not have the funds to start their garden bed. So rather, they decided to do a container planting, and as you can see, it worked so well. And actually, this is a true success story because once the directors saw the progress of the plants and how kids got excited about it, they allocated funds the following year towards creating a garden bed. So this was a true success story for the programs, and they just shared some of their photos of their container plants, which was a very fun process for the kids. So. All right, so gardening support for your program. Again, you have support from state and local agencies for grants and technical assistance. Master gardeners, again, they are trained volunteer educators. They are a great way to get support for your gardening process. Gardening clubs, again, just like master gardeners, they're always looking for ways to help early child care programs. So you should reach out to your state gardening club or your local gardening club for assistance. I put Home Depot here because Home Depot, they normally have wood on sale. So if you're looking for affordable wood to start planting your raised garden bed, then I would suggest going there first and looking through to see what kind of chemical-free wood that they have that's long-lasting and things like that. Again, you want to use parent guardians and the community for volunteers as well. Oh, and I forgot to mention, I gotta go back. Okay. SNAP, I didn't put that, I did put this on here. Okay, so SNAP can also be used to purchase food processing plants and seeds. So I guess as you're explaining this to parents on how to plant at home, make sure you incorporate that as well. The state administrative expense funds can be used to support farm-to-school programs. State agency and key partners in helping breeding local products and various child nutrition programs such as FNS have made it clear that they have state-level coordination for farm-to-school activities. So that's the reason why I put those two up there, is to let you know that there are, by mandate, they are supposed to help you provide farm-to-school activities. So you are not alone in this process. You do have support and you do have help. So as far as gardening resources, I have here the Natural Learning Initiative and the North Carolina State Extension. They have guidelines for creating gardens in your program. They also have a list of warm season and cold season vegetables and fruits, as well as growing guidelines for those fruit and vegetables and creative ways to cook those vegetables. The Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction has a booklet that explores gardening in child care settings and resources available to support those efforts. The North Okanagan Early Childhood Development Coalition has a guide that is intended to be used along with the book Square Foot Gardening by Mel Bartholomew, which provides information about using the square foot gardening method. It also provides activities you can use in your program throughout your gardening experience, from seeding to maintenance and harvesting. The National Farm to School Network has a resource that provides and helps stakeholders get started with farm to early child care education, and it lists each state agencies in charge of farm to ECE. The Texas A&M University Extension. If your vegetable gardening is limited by insufficient space or unsuitable areas, this resource is for you. It provides info on the types of containers you can use, planting information, and even common problems with container gardening and solutions to address those issues. The Food and Agricultural Organization of the United Nations has a manual that takes you through all the steps of planning a gardening project, from deciding what your garden is for, planning how to get help, and learning how to prepare the site. As I mentioned before, there are a list of grants available, and kidsgardening.org has a list of those grants for you. Michigan Farm to School, this is a guide that directs users from all types of programs through the steps of purchasing foods and developing lasting farm to early child care programs at your site. So all these resources are actually located on the Healthy Kids, Healthy Future website. You just go to Healthy Kids, Healthy Future, and I just wanted to make this public announcement that we changed our name recently from Let's Move Child Care to Healthy Kids, Healthy Future. And again, all these resources are located under the Nurture Healthy Eaters Healthy Goal. So you just click on that goal, and on the left side you'll see resources, and you just click on that and you'll see gardening, and all the list of those resources that I just mentioned will be there. So I'll use this time now to address any questions. Okay, so someone mentioned, how do I sustain my garden? And again, we want to emphasize that you know what type of soil you'll need for your plants. By knowing your soil, you'll know how often you have to water it, and things like that. So that's extremely important. Another way to sustain your garden is to make sure you have the kids continuously pay attention to the garden and attend to the garden. So again, I had a program that had a garden, and based on the different age groups, they all did different things. So like the 3-year-olds had to make sure that they watered the plants. 4-year-olds were in charge of weeding and taking away all the weeds and things like that. 5-year-olds were in charge of doing different. So you want to make sure you're ingraining this into your curriculum, allocating tasks for different age groups, different staff members on how to tend to the garden and things like that. So those are 2 suggestions that I have. Do you have any other questions? And again, if you don't have any questions right now, that's okay. Be sure to email me. I'll put my email here below. And again, all the resources you need are on our website. So be sure to visit that when you have the time. And that is it. Thank you all for having me. And be sure to check out the next office hours, which will be in May. And we will be talking about menu planning and grocery shopping. All right, thank you.